everybody, Brittany Haas here, Chief Adventure Officer for Alpenventures UNGUIDED, and welcome once again to my kitchen for the A Taste of the Alps series. Today is the grand finale. We're making apple strudel. I saved the recipe that I'm maybe most excited about, but maybe also most intimidated by for last. So if you're just tuning into our series, just a couple things for you to know. First of all, I run an adventure travel company. I'm not a cook, and I do struggle a little bit in the kitchen, so expect that. Second of all, this is a series that we rolled out during the COVID-19 pandemic because we have quite a few Alpenventures customers who were really planning on making it to the Alps this summer, and they won't be able to make it, so we're bringing the Alps to you by at least teaching you recipes from the huts in the Alps that you can make at home this summer. So today we're going to cover apple strudel. It's kind of a half-day process, but it'll make a lot and it can keep in the freezer. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what we're gonna need for the recipe today. First, there's going to be several steps. So the first step is that we mix together the dough. Then we let the dough sit. But we don't get to sit while the dough sits because during that time, we're going to be preparing some of the filling ingredients for the apple strudel. Then after the 2 hours, we're gonna roll out the dough, put all the filling in, bake it, and then we're gonna serve it with vanilla sauce. So when you order apple strudel at a hut in the Alps, you get the option usually to either have it with ice cream or with vanilla sauce. And today we're going to make some vanilla sauce. The recipe that we're using today did not come straight from a hut, unfortunately. It comes from a German cooking website called Kochkino, so Cooking Cinema. And I'll put the links to the original recipe, which is in German, in the description below. The ingredients that we need are 650 milliliters or 2 2/3 cups of milk. We're going to use this separately in a couple different parts with the different pieces. Then we're going to need about 3 1/4 cups of flour, which is 400 grams of flour, 3 tablespoons of oil, 4 eggs all together, again split into different pieces of the recipe, and just a pinch of salt. Then we're going to need a handful of raisins, which is optional. I'm leaving the raisins out today. And if you have raisins, then you're going to want some rum or some applesauce that you can soak those raisins in before you put them in the filling. Then about 750 to 800 grams of apples, which as you see here, I have 7 smaller apples, so maybe 6 big apples, if that's what you have. Fresh juice from half of a lemon we need. We need some cinnamon. We need sugar. So the sugar is going to be almost a cup of sugar. We're going to use it in 3 different parts, but altogether almost a cup of sugar. 50 grams of breadcrumbs, which works out to be about half a cup. Then we're going to want 3 1/2 tablespoons of butter, which again we'll split up and we'll use that at separate times throughout. Then you're going to use just a little bit of powdered sugar to sprinkle on top at the end. For vanilla sauce, you have the option of using half of a vanilla bean, 2 packets of vanilla sugar if you have access to that, or 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, or 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla paste. And then you need just a tablespoon of cornstarch. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, I have to admit, this is my 3rd attempt at the dough. It's been the first 2 times a little bit too dry. So we're gonna start with the amount of ingredients that are recommended, and then I'm going to add some more milk in to see how that goes. It should be a really flexible dough at the end. So I have 400 grams, which is 3 1/4 cups of flour already measured out, 150 milliliters of lukewarm milk, 3 tablespoons of oil, 1 egg, and a pinch of salt. What we actually want to do is we want to knead this using a stand mixer. I don't have a stand mixer, so I'm going to use a hand mixer. So this is what's been happening. The dough is very dry, and I've tried then just taking it out and kneading it by hand to get it to stick together, which has gotten it to stick together, but it's become very obvious that it's not going to be something that's flexible. We're going to roll it out over a dish towel so that the design is actually transparent through it. It's going to be that thin. The dough I had the first 2 times would not work for that. So I have some more lukewarm milk prepared, and I'm just gonna try adding that little by little until we get the right consistency. So the challenge with this recipe is getting the right amount of flour and liquid and the right consistency of your dough. And since we're doing this video with probably people from multiple countries, it's important to know that the consistency of flour and how you work with it can tend to vary from country to country. I would say we're gonna try to work with that. And then after in your stand mixer, the dough pulls away from the walls, you want to put it out on a floured surface and just knead it for a couple minutes. This dough is a lot better than the other doughs that I had. So I added maybe about 1/8 of a cup of milk. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't totally know what I'm doing here, but it looks a lot better than any of the other doughs that I attempted earlier. So now we're gonna take this bowl, we're gonna just put some oil around it. And I've also brushed the dough with oil. And then we're going to cover this with plastic wrap and leave it sitting for 2 hours. While our dough sits for a couple hours, we're gonna go ahead and roast our breadcrumbs here. We have the 50 grams of breadcrumbs, which is about 1/2 cup, and then 50 grams of sugar, which is about 1/4 cup. Might need to add a little bit more butter. I think I had about a tablespoon in there. The recipe didn't specify how much butter to put in here because there are several, it says 3.5 tablespoons butter, but you use butter several times melted and brushed onto things. So I thought we'd spread it out, but it looks like this is definitely using the full 3.5 tablespoons of butter. This is also a great time for you to take your raisins, if you have raisins, and to soak them in the applesauce or the rum. So it's about a handful of raisins, more or less, depending on what you want, and about 50 milliliters or 2.2 cups of rum or applesauce. Now it's time to prepare the apples, so we need to peel them, take the cores out, and dice them into little pieces. We have our apples ready, and so the first thing I'm going to do real quick after I finish doing that is I'm going to put in the lemon juice, because this is what keeps them from turning brown once they get exposed to air. And now we have the apples with the lemon juice from half of the lemon in it. We're gonna go ahead and add 70 grams of sugar, which is about 1/2 cup, and then 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then we're just gonna mix this up. Now if you have raisins, this would be the time to add them in. So you just wanna take them with your hand and you would squeeze out any liquid that you had in them because we don't want the filling to be too moist. And then you'd pop them in here and stir it up again. We're nearing the final stage of our apple strudel now. So I'm preheating the oven to 190 degrees Celsius, which is 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a dish towel here that's floured. Lightly floured, and now we're going to go ahead and roll out the dough very thin to the point where we can actually see the pattern of the towel through the dough. Not sure how that's gonna go, but that's how it's supposed to be. And then we're gonna brush the melted butter on it. We're gonna put our breadcrumbs in. They got a little bit hard after they cooled down, so I'm heating them up again. So we'll put the breadcrumbs on it, and then we'll put the filling in, and then we roll it up and we put it in the oven. All right, so let's go ahead and roll this out. I'm curious as to how this towel is going to stay in place. So we're gonna roll it out kind of into a rectangular shape. I think this is gonna be better if it stays in place. So we're gonna integrate a little duct tape into our cooking video. I'm making my dad proud here. That is so much easier. So I mentioned earlier, but we want this so thin that you can see the pattern of the towel through it. And we're also gonna have to pull it a little bit to get it to that point. Starting to be able to see the pattern of the towel through this. I was not confident that I would get to this point where I can see the towel pattern through the dough because I have a long history of rolling pin catastrophes, but I can see it and everything's in one piece and I think it's okay. So next step is to cut the edges off so that it's really perfectly straight. Now we want to go ahead and brush melted butter over the entire thing here. Okay, we're going to leave a wide edge here and we're going to go ahead and put on the breadcrumbs, which we toasted. I think I might have over toasted them. This is the breadcrumbs with the sugar and the butter. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and put the apples in. So I have a little bit of extra fluid in here from the lemon juice, but I don't want the filling to be very much, to have a lot of liquid, because I want it to stay kind of piece by piece. So I'm just gonna avoid getting any extra juice onto here. And now it's time to roll our strudel. Start by folding in the long edges. So we use the towel to help us roll this up. So then we're gonna take the towel and we're gonna kind of drop it onto the cookie sheet with the open edge down. And then we're going to brush it with melted butter and put it in the oven. And now we're going to bake it for 20 to 25 minutes. All right, it looks like our apple strudel is done baking. We're gonna let that cool off a little bit, and while we're letting that cool off, we're gonna work on our vanilla sauce. We have half a liter of milk here. We're gonna use almost all of the milk, not quite all of it. And then we're going to mix the sugar, the granulated sugar, and we're gonna need 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now we're gonna go ahead and bring that to a boil. And you'll see here that I have my eggs already separated. So I have 3 egg yolks and then I have the egg whites. While we're waiting for this to heat up and come to a boil, let's go ahead and talk about where we might find apple strudel at a hut in the Alps. So apple strudel is common throughout the Alps, definitely in the German and the Austrian huts. You'll find it for sure. Also in northern Italy, particularly in the South Tyrol region of Italy, which is the German-speaking region. So we have a couple tours where you'll find lots of really delicious apple strudels. One of those is definitely on our Culinary Delight hut hiking tour through the Austrian Alps that spends 1 night in Switzerland. And this tour is really focused on food. So if you love food, it's definitely something to consider. Several of the huts in the area participate in a program where once a year, usually the second Saturday of July, Michelin star chefs visit the huts and introduce an amazing new dish to the hut using local ingredients and teaches the hut staff how to prepare that dish. And that dish stays at the hut throughout the entire season. So you can go hike from hut to hut and participate in this program and have amazing scenery during the day, cozy, comfortable, Austrian charming huts in the evening, and delicious food with recipes prepared by Michelin star chefs. Not bad. Another great place to find apple strudel is on our family-friendly Austrian hut hike, and that's very close to Innsbruck. So you get your boots on the trail a lot faster coming from the airport than you would really most any other trail. And that's a pretty mellow itinerary. A lot of people that you see out in that area, they're on kind of their first ever hut-to-hut hike. The days are shorter. The huts are a little bit more comfortable. All of the huts along the route have the option of a smaller room, which would be more suitable for a family. And the trails are pretty good with short days. So that's another wonderful place. I'll put the links for both of those tours below. While we're waiting for that to heat up, we're gonna go ahead and beat up the egg whites a little bit to turn them into foam, or as they say in the actual recipe for this, into snow. I would say that looks like snow. Okay, it looks like it's starting to get pretty warm. It's steaming a little bit. I'm going to mix 1 tablespoon of cornstarch with the remaining milk. And now we're going to whisk the egg yolks together first. And we're going to add them. Looks like it's boiling. So we want to remove it from the heat. And then we're going to mix in the egg white. All right, so we have our sauce ready. Our apple strudel has cooled down. I think I may have overcooked it a little bit. It didn't look done earlier, but I remember it's supposed to be soft. It is soft, but maybe it's a little bit overcooked. So first things first, we're gonna sprinkle some powdered sugar over that. Okay, so the piece maybe fell apart a little bit when I cut it open. Maybe it's still a little bit too warm. I'm gonna get some vanilla sauce on that. And the moment of truth. Yeah, definitely really yummy. So lots of work, but we're gonna have a lot of leftover, and we can put that in the freezer and pull it out in a month or so. And that's it for the A Taste of the Alps series. So for those of you who have been watching and joining us this whole time, thank you so much. If this is your first video, go ahead and hop through our YouTube channel and find some of the other great videos that we have from the Alps. And I hope everybody has a wonderful time adventuring. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy adventuring.